For me, New York has become this fabulous aquarium where I have this soundtrack that I'm listening to and then seeing all sorts of things. I fall in love with every person I see.
When I think of New York City, I think of the New York of my teenage years and the grittiness. And I look at it through these like lenses of it was so cool, it was this, that. But I also think if you were 17 now and you come to New York City and you see it this way,
Right.
Isn't New York the same magical place for you at 17 as it was for me at 17? And I guess the conversation is, was it really that great back then, or was it just that I was 17?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is that it was probably a little bit of both.
That's brilliant, because that means there were old people thinking about us that they don't even know New York.
So let's say you're at a dinner party, you're sitting next to my aunt and uncle, and they have no idea, they don't know anything about art. How would you describe what you do?
Wow. I hate sitting next to anybody that doesn't know what I do, because I have nothing to talk about otherwise. But I would say I'm an art critic. I see about 25 or 30 shows a week.
Wow.
In New York. And then I go home and I worry about writing, and I hate writing, and then I write. And my job is to notice things and say what I notice and not be afraid, even though I am afraid.
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of, what am I afraid of? I'm a bundle of nerves, are you?
Yeah, I am.
And what are we afraid of?
Everything. That's a whole other
It's
conversation.
never specific, is it? I'm not afraid of dying.
No, that's
No.
true. That's on my list of not afraid of. I guess I'm afraid. Look, I mean, I love putting myself out there, and I love being, making things and showing things. And I love like when people hate it, and I love when people love it.
I have that too.
But I'm still afraid of that reaction, that response of not being able to control the results.
Yeah.
I guess I fear, like, what will I be? Who will I be if nobody cares? So hate and love are okay, because that means you've caused some kind of reaction, right?
I think for me that the process I find both thrilling and terrifying. Like every
The
time.
writing process?
Yeah, I hate writing. I'd rather do anything in this life than write, and yet I can only write. What is the process like for you of designing?
Process. I think I actually read this on your page on Instagram. Of course, you don't know what you're doing. You haven't done it yet.
Right.
Did you say that?
I did.
Yeah. I think since I read it, I bring it up all the time because part of my process is worrying or being afraid that I haven't figured out what our end result is. And I just think if only I knew what this was going to end up, we could work backwards and have a much easier time of putting it together.
That's an impossibility.
That's an impossibility because we can't get to that point of the process without going through the process. So what the process looks like for me is like thinking about what I'm interested in, thinking about what my team is interested in, looking at fabrics, talking about colors, thinking about shapes, proportions, silhouettes, thinking about a mood, and then starting to construct a story that we want to tell.
Both of us work in these fields that everybody else either poo-poos or are intimidated by, or they talk about the money. And yet I think that both of us are sort of trying to do the best we can and make it accessible to as many people as possible. Does that work for you, or how do you relate to that?
I think there's like two sides to that. I always think like with the runway, what we say is it has like no boundaries. We just do what we want to do, but the price is very high. And by its nature, it's rare, it's inaccessible.
Right.
But I think what's important for me is that the ideas are accessible to anybody. I mean, even if what they do is inspire you, that's free, right? So it's kind of like art, if you can, I mean, in a way. I'm not comparing fashion to art.
I think fashion is art, and art is fashion, and it's all part of the whole ball of wax. That everybody is always dividing things up, and I think that that's anti-everything. That's me.
I think that you can say that because of where you are and what you do. Mm-hmm. But when a fashion designer says fashion is art, they are a pretentious, arrogant, like, how dare you think you are, a great artist. You work in cloth and you make fashion. But that's probably not your type of critic who would feel that way.
And I think that that's a shortcoming on the part of my world, that it tries to keep every other world at arm's length. Ceramics, fashion, macrame, everything.
Yeah. But I was taught that. I was always intimidated by the art world growing up. I felt I didn't have enough of an education to look at art, I didn't see me ending up on a park bench talking to you. I thought I thought I was going to have a career in fashion. I never thought I would be in the place I am.
Yeah. I think that we all have an idea that we're going to work out, but we never envision what that means.
Yeah.
And it's so much better than anything we could imagine.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It really is true.
The Met is the greatest encyclopedic museum of art in this hemisphere. It is a 1 million square foot building with 1 million objects from all over the world that allows us to see everything, anywhere, anyhow. And when we get quiet in this massive structure, we talk to ourselves and we change the world, and our life changes. So here we are in the Met's miraculous, glorious, mind-bending Sienna, the rise of painting, 1300 to 1350. And in a way, this is the beginning of time, or a beginning of time. Instead of a flat icon, you have a beginning of a story, of narrative, of turning, gesturing. It was hugely expensive and controversial when the Met bought it, and it looks like nothing. It looks like every other little icon. What do you see when you look at that?
A lot more than I did before you explained it to me.
The voices in our head have to be quieted so time can stop.
Yes.
And we can start to know ourselves, the I that lives inside of all of us, and what that I might think, and how that I might connect to every other I.
So much of art for me is the context, the time you see it, what you're seeing it with, the whole story.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like, I'm immediately drawn to these because I just love that they're unfinished.
Yes.
And there's a suggestion of the story here. But of course, that just becomes even more exaggerated by the finish and the hyper, sort of finish of the other pieces. So I looked at these and I just thought what a relief to see this sort of veil.
It's true. That's brilliant. Unfinished is a very modern idea too. And it's fantastic that way. It's like, this is what you come for. Everyone always asks, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what it means. And I guess I would say that art means exactly what fashion means. You don't know what it means. And there are as many art centers as there are artists. The firepower of this wall is off the map. You have 8 panels from one altarpiece that was cut up and divvied up. And this work has never been brought together before. It will never come back together again. Look at the architecture of that space. This is the beginning of perspective. The idea that you're seeing into space. It's not just this flat thing.
Yeah.
And that isn't perfect, but it's forming.
How did you come to look at art? What does that mean to you? How do you do that? How do you see all of this in these works?
You know what? I think that anyone can do it, but you have to get very, very quiet inside. I go into this with the idea that there is no right answer. And so when I look at this, I'm telling myself a story that's completely my own. Mm-hmm. It's like Oscar Wilde said, every reader is reading themselves.
I hear you, and then I think all of that is true. However, when I do quiet myself, I don't read as illustrious and deep narrative that you do. So it's fascinating to hear your reading of it.
All of us speak a different dialect of beauty. My dialect is from silent, inanimate objects. What do we want young artists to understand, to take away, to know right now?
I think you said it really beautifully, and it stayed with me. You said, of course you don't know what you're doing. You haven't done it yet. And I think that sits with me so well, because I think one of the most beautiful things that I think keeps me and other young creative people going is curiosity. And curiosity doesn't need to have an answer. It just is curiosity.
Yeah, it just is.
Yeah, it just is.